Hi, I want to tell you about my history with Acroyoga today. I think it's pretty interesting, and I also want to make it interesting by giving you like a more raw version of what happens inside of Acroyoga. So you might find some of the things you could like pick up things and object to them and criticize them, and I just try to give you a raw view and also put things in context. Um, for me, Uh, my start with Acroyoga was I saw it and I wanted to do it. And a lot of people that I've met who are doing Acroyoga for a while, it's been the same thing for them. They thought they wanted to do it. And I noticed with friends who don't want to do it, they thought and didn't want to do it. There's this like clear dividing line where you see someone upside down on top of another sweaty person, and one type of person is like, wow! I want to be upside down. I want to play. I don't know, like, just hug strangers. And then there's the other person who's like, I don't want to touch people, and that looks scary. And so I kind of don't try to convince people to go into Acroyoga more. I think it's like a thing where you get to see it and you pretty instantly know on which divide you fall. And that's just it. So I had seen Acroyoga at festivals. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about West Coast transformational festivals in a bit. And it's just common there. Lots of people do it there. There's actually a history of just people learning from their friends at festivals. It's just like a fun thing you do at a festival, your friends do it, your friends show it to you. It's very different from this New York City world of boutique fitness and you have to be a 200-hour accredited teacher. It's more just like the sturdy bums doing fun stuff in the desert, rolling around on top of each other. And you can also tell it from the names. Right, like you have Ninja Star, you have High Flying Veil. So those are all really, really fun names. And they're really playful. And in my experience, they come more from festival cultures and people having fun with their friends versus serious gymnastics. And for a while, there was like a real push where they were trying to change every fun name into something serious and boring because it's more correct. Like, there was a push that Bird cannot be called Bird anymore. So, back to my history. I saw it, I wanted to do it. However, like, I didn't have a way in for a long time. Eventually, I was at Lucidity Festival, and someone early in the morning offered a class, and I was super excited to go there, but I overslept. By the time I got to class, it had started, and warning, here's something you might get upset about. The first thing I saw was someone being upside down with a skirt, and the skirt flipped over, and just like their happy see-through underwear showing. And that was my impression of Acroyoga. I think women and access to women and exposed skin can draw a certain crowd that can completely kill the vibe and lead to all kinds of things. However, out there at festivals, there's a lot of freedom. Just like, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about these festivals. Lucidity Festival specifically is a festival that happened the same time that Coachella Festival happened. Coachella is like this big mainstream festival, and they wanted all the drunk people to go to Coachella so that only the sober, I guess, otherwise chemically enhanced people would come to their festival. And it just brought a whole very different kinds of people. Like there was a class in human touch that I really liked. It was like learning how to touch people. My tent was next to the Hare Krishna temple. temporary temple, they were chanting all night. And when people got pissed enough at them at 3 a.m., they decided to go through the whole festival and chant everywhere to wake everyone up. There was a smoothie making class for little kids. It's just like a whole different world. It's like a playground for adults. It's as soon as you're there, I don't know, like, there's all the stuff that's fun to an inner child of an adult. Yeah, and I think key for these environments are filtering mechanisms. Like, for people to be free, freedom is usually very fragile for it to happen. And it only takes a few people, sometimes only like one person, to kind of destroy it. There used to be a time where a lot of Acroyoga classes would end with lunar Acroyoga, and that's pretty much unheard of these days. And I just kept hearing that teachers would stop doing it because there was someone in class who inappropriately touched someone else. And it's fragile, but if you get to experience freedom, it's amazing. At another festival, Symbiosis, a student decided to show up only wearing a rabbit mask, and it was a tiny rabbit mask. That was their only apparel they brought to class, and they brought a tiny little carrot, and they held the carrot in their mouth the entire time. Like, all the acro flying was done, gently holding a carrot in between their teeth without biting down. And it's just so cool and fun. And it's kind of good to contrast. I think when I was in LA, half the people were in Acroyoga were festival people, and then there were also some people who were just like not festival people. It seems in the Midwest you have a lot of very people that do partner acro very seriously and really cool stuff, but they seem to come to it more from like a gymnast background. It's like a very different demographic. They go about it a lot more seriously, and it's different. And I mean, it's kind of also good to know where the names come from. Like, some of these names have been kind of banned nowadays. Like, they used to be really fun. Like, there's a thing called muff diving, and that has been considered as too offensive. And like, who comes up with that except for like people who are just spending days out in the desert or forest living in tents? So my first class, so this is a little bit of like just a personal storytelling. That's like a fun little anecdote. So my first class, I showed up too late. Everybody was partnered up, but there were these two really attractive women who decided to like talk to me because they'd come late too and didn't want to participate. And one of them had this glass container of like a muesli yogurt, and she offered me, "Hey, do you want a bite?" And she also had this wooden spoon, and it was like this world where like you didn't want to have plastic, so you had like this like crock char masonry glass thing, and the spoon was like carved, so it was not very functional, but it was very carved. And so like I scooped up some of her muesli yogurt, and right as I put it in my mouth, like some of it fell back into the jar, and her face looked so disgusted and unhappy. I was so internally melting because I thought she was so cute and she was so interested in me, and that just was the end of that. Okay. At that time, it was really hard to find classes. I ended up trying another class at a festival, and this time I showed up really early. Really very early, and I ended up getting paired with a guy and a girl, and it turned out they were both working at the same vending booth, and they were kind of flirting with each other, and they were really not interested in me being part of it. And so after like 10-15 minutes, I was just like left on the sidelines of the class, and that's how my second class kind of ended. It can be kind of hard to get into Acroyoga because it's partnered, because it's social. You have these kind of social dynamics where maybe if you're female and attractive, it's really easy, but you also get a lot of attention you don't want. If you're in the less desirable groups of people, you can maybe really struggle. There's a really interesting anecdote. There is one teacher whom I met like a few times, and where she was also taking classes. What always surprised me was like anytime she'd like see me in the distance, she'd be so exciting and euphoric. It was like a celebration is breaking out with like confetti, and I was like, I don't know how this happened, but I like it. It's cool. And then one day she told me, the first time she came to meet me was at a Acroyoga festival at Divine Play. I was in the same class as her. She saw me and she was like, "Dear God, I do not want to partner with him." And she was just praying that I wouldn't partner with her. And as luck would have it, we ended up in the same group. And she said she found out that I'm actually like really cool and an amazing person. And ever since whenever she saw me, she broke out in celebration. That's I was a little surprised that I would create such strong reactions on people, but there you go. So it probably took me another year until I found a regular class in Los Angeles, just because there wasn't a lot. And I think it's really interesting to kind of describe what this class was like. It was at a kind of like a pole dancing studio. So someone had managed to talk the pole dancing studio into like, hey, let me have this corner of the room to teach a Acroyoga class once a week. And like after a while we learned the guy would watch before class a YouTube video to learn a washing machine, and he just learned it from watching. And sometimes when we really couldn't make his flows happen, he would like try to do it himself, and sometimes he couldn't do it himself. So that just like explains his level of class. But that was the only Acroyoga class that I found in LA that was teaching washing machines. Yeah, and another little just kind of like slice of life color. There was a student in class, she was a flyer. LA is a driving city, but she would Uber to class each time and back, so there is commitment and expense just to coming to class. And she was so terrified about flying, she was shaking. She was shaking like this the whole time she was in the air. It was crazy. She was so scared, like her face was pale. It was like, I imagine sometimes she might have headache from all the tension and fear. However, she kept coming back week after week because something in her was hooked. Then the other class I went to was very different. It was run by a teacher who was described that she really likes family, like she's very family oriented with her own family, and she likes to create classes that feel like a family. I was a little disappointed that we didn't do any machines, that's why I kept going to the other class, but like it felt really nice, and we learned a lot of things about Acroyoga in general, like good vibes. It was very fun. The studio was just this room right next to a super busy street with multiple lanes. And the door was like facing the street, and there was just a door, and then us sitting on the floor. Um, Anecdote time. I think this is the only time I passed out in class and I didn't tell anyone. Um, at some point, she had us partner up, so we would kind of massage each other. And I was partnered with a guy who was pretty strong, and he was pushing on my traps, and it was hurting. And I didn't want to say anything. I was like, "It's good, it's good." And I remember lying on the floor, hearing cars swishing past my head, only like 6 feet away. And the pain went really intense, and I started seeing light. And the next thing I remember is a few seconds later, and I think I passed out because he pushed so hard. So I don't know, it triggered something. Didn't tell anyone about that. By the way, not telling anyone about that. In one of our classes, I had my first fall, and I think in a way you can expect your first fall to be your worst fall. I was in high flying whale, and the person who was spacing me, they just like dropped me. They were a beginner. The person spotting me didn't do anything, and in my brilliance, I remembered my judo class from when I was, I don't know, 13 years old. And I remember they taught us by falling to hit the ground really hard. I don't remember why, it's just what I remember. So I'm like lying on my back, he's leaning over, I start falling, and as I fall down, my leg, I like put it out really hard, and I've since learned you want to do the opposite when you fall. You want to kind of like softly roll off. But there was a really loud bang, everyone really freaked out. My foot was hurting, and the teacher was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Like, you don't have to be a hero, you can tell us if you're not okay." But I was just like, I'm okay, no, it doesn't hurt. And that moment I learned a lot of people won't admit when they're hurt in acroyoga. And they'll say they're just fine and will walk out. And if you're a beginner, it can actually create a little bit of an illusion. There are actually quite a few injuries in acroyoga. But in order to find it out, you have to actually have people trust you enough to tell you about it. Sometimes people just disappear for like a few weeks or a month and then come back. So I want to put this a little in perspective. Just because someone might not have ever done it and is now freaked out. If you compare sports, acroyoga is kind of similar injury rate to soccer. And you may think soccer and kicking a ball is completely safe compared to being on top of people, but people keep breaking their legs. People run with their heads into each other and get concussions during playing soccer. It's a lot more dangerous than people think. And just to make a point, playing baseball, every year 15 teenagers die. Acroyoga, on the other hand, you're gonna start with pretty easy things. You're gonna use spotters, so you're not gonna do a death fall as a complete beginner in your first class. Death fall is a certain trick. I mean, if you happen to fall to your death and you're the 1 in 10 million people, I don't want you to come complaining back to me. Yeah. I mean, other fun anecdotes from that class. I don't, I give you these little tidbits and bits and pieces, partly to entertain you, but also to like pull back the veil on what's happening in classes. Because I think a lot of descriptions are like just one paragraph and they're very clinical. They don't really take you in and let you see the whole stew. I remember the teacher was female and she was basing one of the students. And all of a sudden, she pulls back her arms and feet really hard, and the student rolls to the side and goes tumbling in a roll, like just to the floor, and like rolls down the floor. And everyone's like, what the heck just happened? And she like yelled at him, don't ever do that again to me. I do not know what happened. From the outside it didn't look like much, but my best guess is that she got somehow in contact with his private part, but it's just, I don't know, startling stuff happens. So I noticed I already had 20 minutes in the first part, and I figured the last story might not be the best thing to leave off on. So, let's continue my journey. The next big step in my acro journey was to go to the first festival. At the time, there was this festival called Divine Play, and it was unlike anything else. It was this huge conference hall in Portland, and they set up mats for classes, and there were something like 14, 17 mat islands in a huge space, and each island had a class going on. And for, I think, 3-5 days, like every hour they had a class on every island. So it's just like a ton of classes, and they encourage you like, hey, don't stick with a class, just check out a class. If you don't like it, move over to the next class. It was like enormous. And I was scared to go the first time because I'd only been doing classes that lasted an hour. And I was like, how do I last the whole day? But everyone told me, don't worry. The other thing, you're gonna get more tired, and eventually the adrenaline kicks in and it takes care of all your energy problems. I was skeptical. In my whole life, I was just getting more and more tired as I exercise. However, it was absolutely true. First day of Divine Play, normal energy. After the first class, I was done. After the second class, I was really done. After the next class, I was like really exhausted and like just like on fumes. And then suddenly in the afternoon, I got a little more energy. And every single day, every hour, I just kept getting more and more energy. I'd never experienced that in exercise before. And so it was incredible to go from doing 1 hour of acro to doing, I think 3 full days I went. 3 full days of acro. Just incredible. And my second festival, I went to Acroyoga. It's a different group of people. There's a lot of overlap. All kind of, the theme a little competitive. Like there were the 2 big festivals. Yeah, I had something really interesting happen at Acroyoga. And it's a really good story. Like if you're afraid of being dropped, first, I don't want to take getting dropped lightly because some people got really injured, and you usually do want to have a spotter and you want to progress to, where you build up skill. You want to also learn bailing, you want to learn falling and all those things. However, there's also a big psychological component where on your beginner journey, you go from I'm terrified of falling to, falling is part of it. So I was still in that stage of falling is terrifying. I ran into a friend at the festival, and he came from a family that was acrobat, so he's been doing acroyoga since being a teenager, like constantly with his family vacation, everywhere. And he told me, I promise you, I will not drop you. Guess what he did? He dropped me. Guess what he did a minute later after he promised me again to not drop me? He dropped me. For like half hour, he continuously kept dropping me. And after half hour, I was like, I don't really care so much about getting dropped anymore. Again, this is not to say that dropping is a casual thing. However, there's a point where, falling out of certain things, you're comfortable because you know how to fall out of them. Another area of my early Acroyoga growth was going to Muscle Beach in Santa Monica. It's an area on the beach where every Sunday afternoon lots of people come to do Acroyoga, and it's been going on for decades. There are documentaries that go back like 30, 40 years to document what people did then. And I don't know what people do today, but when I used to go, what they did that day was pretty low level compared to what people did like 30, 40 years ago. We often think that we're like the first and everything's so much better, but yeah. Also, Muscle Beach gives you like a different cultural influence on Acroyoga. Like I've told you, my background is doing like festival Acroyoga, where you have like hippies partying in the desert and in forests. People in the Midwest come from a gymnastics background. If you're in New York City, you maybe come from a boutique background, like boutique fitness, like, you get your own mat and like someone's ahead of you with like a little brush to like brush off any dust pieces from the mat that you're on, and the teacher is like certified, accredited, and everything's very hush-hush, and Acroyoga just happens to be one of the other, luxury things that are being served on the platter of that studio. The very different backgrounds. On Muscle Beach, a lot of the people are professional performers. There's a entertainment industry in Los Angeles, and people will do Acroyoga for movies, TV, and so they go about it kind of like in a different way too. Some of them, they also come to Muscle Beach during the week. They might come 3 times a day. They might come in the morning to do Acroyoga, then they go home to eat some food, take a nap. They come back in the afternoon, and again in the evening, so it's a very different crowd. And to give you a little flavor, at the time when I was there was kind of like a rankle in the community. Someone had gotten to do something for Disney. I heard like they got paid $70,000 for it. And a lot of other people felt very upset because they wanted the $7,000 or thought they were more qualified or whatever. Another aspect of performance culture is that, so if you imagine you're in Muscle Beach. So there's this long boardwalk in Santa Monica. There's a long expanse of like sand. It's like really hot sand in the summer, like no shadow, just harsh sun. And in between is this like grassy island. And you have a lot of wild people going around on the boardwalk. Like, I don't know, like one day I went for a walk on the boardwalk. Some guy with a whip decided to like chase someone else and was like trying to whip him, and the person was running away and then like running into the toll booth of a parking attendant to like lock himself in. Craziness out there. So here's this grassy spot in the middle of craziness, sun heat and everything. And the southern side was for L-base Acroyoga, and the northern side was for standing acro, so they were split. And then some people, they would only do Acroyoga with you if you had a certain minimum amount of followers. Like they might be like, if you don't have more than 10,000 followers, I will dirty my brand by being associated with you, so I do not want to be seen with you. And it is what it is. I haven't been back, but I've heard that there's actually a second jam that split off. People got too intimidated by what's happening at Muscle Beach, so they started a new jam in Culver City. And that's also kind of like very interesting for the dynamics. Like, just get some mental picture. Some people in New York City come into an Acroyoga class because they don't realize it's an Acroyoga class. They think it's a yoga class, where they're gonna just like do some stretching in the corner on like the yoga mat while listening to calming music. There are these people throwing people through the air. That's so intimidating that some people created their own splintered off jam. I want to give you color to get your little story. I have been talking a lot. We are at 30 minutes. This is the LA part of my Acroyoga history. And I haven't gotten yet to like what happened in New York City. I hope you enjoyed all the little anecdotes, and I hope it didn't scare you off too much. But I have a feeling if you're a wild-at-heart freak who wants to let your inner child come out, you might have gotten excited by some of the stories. And if you're just more like a Pilates person who's like, I actually looked up today, like, why do people not like Acroyoga? And someone wrote this really upset article about like being close to people and sweat. And the article started with someone getting offended that they went to a regular workout class and the person next to them was sweating. No interaction, just the person next to them had sweat on their forebrow, and they found that offensive and totally horrible. If that's you, I love you too, but I think this kind of like helped you more, steer you toward things you're interested in and will find happiness with. So if you have any fun little anecdotes and you're courageous, feel free to share them. You can also direct message me if they're too good to share for Instagram. Hey. I'm gonna continue my personal journey through Acroyoga. What I'm hoping is that maybe you're curious about a class. Maybe you've come to a class and you thought class is all just about learning bird because you came to one class. I want to like pull back a little bit, kind of like the veil of all the stuff that happen in the Acroyoga community and as you go on your Acroyoga journey. And I think at least from my perspective, I might have also come in like an Acroyoga class is about learning bird and throne. However, then as I actually went to classes, I had all kinds of different experiences and dynamics to deal with. And so I'm hoping like if you listen through my journey that maybe you'll be like, oh man, I ran into this too and I never even really consciously thought about the dynamic. That's kind of the thing, like once you get to talk with someone else about the dynamic, you become a lot more aware of what's going on, and it changes your relationship to it. Let's jump into it. In the last 3 videos, I didn't actually get to the teacher whom I consider my formative Acroyoga teacher or like my main influence. He's really wonderful, and I think a lot of people know him. They often refer to him as the OG because he's been there kind of before, I guess the term Acroyoga was even coined, and he was there before Acroyoga teacher trainings existed. And it's interesting, he one time described like his experience of teaching class Acroyoga for so long is he sees new people come into his class, they get better, they decide to become teachers, they stop coming to his class, and then eventually they get to this point where they're like, well, we are missing things, and they keep coming back to his class. I think it's really interesting and inspirational. He has this Friday night class, and his concept was it's a 3-hour class. And you were saying the first 2.5 hours is what it takes to get people to be tired, so that in the last half hour they have to use perfect technique. And I'm sure you've run into a lot of people who just muscle through moves without actually really learning the art and technique of Acroyoga. Another thing I really liked about him, and I've met really experienced like that, is when you ask him for a question like, hey, I'm struggling with this, he'd often come, he'd like have you do it, he'd like lie down next to you, and he'd actually look at what you're doing, and he'd kind of like pinpoint the issue, and he'd give you just the thing you need to make it happen. And it's kind of amazing. First, for like the empathy, instead of someone just giving you general advice or telling you to be stronger, like someone actually like realized what you're struggling with, and then, you know, gave you the pinpointed remedy. I usually try to stay positive, and in this kind of history telling. But I want just to highlight how amazing it is. There's this New York City teacher, and pretty much the only thing I've heard from her is always, you know, like you fail at something, and she's like, you shouldn't have stopped that person. Or you're trying to do something, like you're trying to extend your arm, but you can't, and you're like struggling for 10 minutes to extend your arm in a certain situation. And she'll be just like, you should have extended your arm. And it's like, she's telling exactly what you're trying to do and you're struggling with, just do it. And that's like her whole advice and feedback. And, you know, so he's a complete opposite, and it's wonderful. Also, his class, the experience in the class was different from what I've encountered anywhere here in New York. So it's just good to know these things exist. Classes generally have like a sequence. I think pretty much in New York City, all the sequences I encountered is if there's a washing machine, so I'll teach you the washing machine and the steps of the washing machine. Or maybe they have like an easy progression of skills. However, that teacher, he would pick a theme for the 3-hour class, and often like each time he like stepped up kind of to the next layer, there would be this reveal, would be like, whoa, I didn't realize this was possible. And then he does the next reveal and he's like, whoa, I never thought about it like this. Like he put a lot of thought into how to structure the classes to give you like a real experience and to expand your mind to what's possible. If you visit LA, I highly recommend visiting his class, if he's still doing it. The other part was, in class, when a demo happened, a lot of couples just gave each other PDA. You know, like they like put their head into the lap of their partner and they caress her hair and they get even more PDA-like. And it was kind of like really nice to see how people are closer to each other and comfortable, and just among platonic people it was like normal to, you know, give someone a massage, like massage their hands, give them a little shoulder rub during the class. And so it was just like really nice, like you could just be sitting there and suddenly you feel some hands on your neck and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, oozing into it. And it's not anything like here in New York City. Maybe it happens in some tiny little corners a little bit, but mostly people would be like, oh my god, do not touch me. It's sterile, I think is the term. Other interesting things that happened in that class was I had one of the most interesting experiences spotting someone. So I'm in class and I'm spotting someone, and the person decides to pull one hand back. I'm like, that's interesting. Person decides to pull another hand back. I'm just like holding the flyer at this point. I'm like, what's going on? And then like a leg gets pulled back too, and another leg gets pulled back too. And so the base is just lying on the floor like this, and like I'm holding the flyer in the air. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? And then the base just like puts their hands and feet back and continues as if nothing had happened. And so there was this habit that after class we'd go to this like taco truck to eat food. That's the other night thing. In LA there was a lot more social connection. You know, like we'd stand at the taco truck, eat tacos and chat. And so like I asked the guy like, you know, the thing, what happened in class? And I was like, oh yeah, I took acid before I went to class and I was peeking during class. Interesting. And you know, so this is like a public recording, right? So I should say, you know, drugs and acro are a bad mixture. However, in LA there was this like group that did acid and acro. That was just their thing, and obviously it's high risk. But I guess they just like having hallucinations and doing acro, and I guess it's very trippy, like if you imagine yourself like flying across and seeing things and being out of it. Yeah, there was like a 420 acro groups that got together, you know, they like to smoke weed. I missed it. It didn't happen when I was doing acro, I was like a little earlier. So there's a group that got together and did naked acro, and they talked about how important it is to have soft skin on your feet when you do naked acro, because people are not happy about the exfoliation. When I went to a festival, I got to see shibari acros. That's where you maybe tie up someone's arm so they can't use their arm much, and you do acro, and it was like fun then, like all these subgroups. Here in New York City, it seems like there's much going on. I know there's groups that every spring gets a cabin together somewhere, Colorado, Utah, and they go skiing together. That's pretty cool. And I also want to talk about another Acroyoga teacher I took classes with in LA. He's amazing. Someone described him as a line cop who doesn't know he's a line cop. And it's very true. He's this like ex-martial art fighter. He got injured in a fight and his doctor told him like, if you get one more bad hit, you know, you are done. You cannot continue this career. And so he was like, well, on the mat I was wrestling people against their will, now I'm wrestling people with their will and get them into the air. Yeah, he's a really cool guy. His group, they had a reputation. Like everyone talked about them and were like, these guys do not do any spotting or hardly any spotting. And so I went to the class to check it out, and there wasn't much spotting done. I do have a story about spotting in that class. There's a thing where a lot of people start spotting very timidly, like I call it sometimes a paparazzi spotting, like they're putting their hands in front of their face as if they do not want to get their picture taken. And I don't know, it very vaguely looks like someone spotting someone bouldering overhead, and you put your arms like this. But if the person is kind of below you and you put your arms like this, you're not gonna catch them. Anyway, I'm in this class, and it's standing acro. So someone new flips his partner through the air, and when she's right upside down, she like tightens out And he can't continue, and cause she's like just like a stick upside down, like he loses his grip on her, and she just like pile drives straight with her head towards the ground, and my hand was right there, caught her shoulder. Teacher comes running like mad, thinking she like, like seeing the whole thing, and once he sees I caught her, he's just like, good spotting. Felt so good. And at that point, I think pretty much anyone goes through this. If you really have to spot someone, you realize you were critical, and you realize you had to be in the place to spot. Like, you have to be ready. And there are all these trade-offs in your head where like, oh, I don't want to be too close to people, and I won't make them uncomfortable. And well, once you got that, you're like, well, my job is important. I just have to get my body in and my head's in whatever way I need, so that I can actually catch the person. I had a really fun experience in that class. We did side star on standing on hands. So I had a flyer sitting on my shoulder, and there's kind of this wind up, like I wind to the side, I go down, and then I kind of like unwind and shoot her body up. And as she goes up, I'm like supposed to extend to an arm. I'm learning. I'm a weakling. So I go here, and she's like down here. And the teacher's like, just like, use your legs to pump her. So there's a thing where if you bend your knees and then you pump yourself up, you can quickly bend them again. You can pump up the flyer, so you don't have to have straight pushing strength. And the entire class circled around me, and they were cheering me on to like do it, and the flyer was cheering me on. I was there like, like beyond the edge of my strengths, but like I had to try one more pump, and like one more pump, and I eventually got it up, and it was like this huge hero moment. And those victories are really wonderful in Acro, and I wish those things for you too. On a more serious note, something else happened in this gym. It was kind of a big facility. There was a little lura, so there were really high ceilings and tumbling and lots of other aerial sports. And really high up, there was also like lura rings, and people did lura under the ceiling. And at this one point, the entire gym just went silent. Like nobody even said, look there. It just went, like people froze and stared up at the ceiling. And like, cause everyone was so frozen, like you would just like look, and once you saw the ceiling, you'd like freeze too. There was a woman. Lura is a ring, and usually you're in the ring or on top of the ring. And there's like a rope that attaches us higher up. She had managed to wrap the rope around her neck, and the weight of her body was on the lure ring, strangulating her. She like couldn't speak because she was getting strangulated, and you just saw her face. She couldn't lift her body weight because it would have meant more weight on her neck, and I can't even reproduce like how it happened, but like you just saw her up there, strangulated, and my head was like, how many seconds can you live without air? And like, how long does it take for someone to get up there? Because she's like, I don't know, like 10 feet up in the air. Someone in that studio just went running for like a huge ladder all the way on the other end, went running back to her, and like they get her out, and like she was fine, but there are moments. And this is kind of a good segue to another story. It's not actually Acroyoga, but like it really affected me. I met someone at a solar immersion, and I'll tell you about a solar immersion in a moment. She was just like really wonderful, fun person. She's like very happy, outgoing, easygoing. Like, like she didn't want to have any conflict. Like if someone, kind of like didn't want to do something, just like fine. And that attitude was kind of, it's really nice, I guess, in the moment, no conflict. But, yeah. So I met her at the solar immersion, and we decided we want to go do canyoneering together. So canyoneering is a sport where you go down canyons by whatever means possible. So the canyons with it, you had to like rappel down waterfalls. I don't think there was enough water because it's Southern California, but in some places you have to go swimming, sometimes hiking, sometimes climbing. And we started doing canyoneering together, going on trips. And I remember it's this one trip, I was looking at how she set up the anchor. Anchor is where you set up the rope against a big tree or rock so you can rappel off of it. And there's a thing where after you set up the anchor, you kind of do an extra step so that you don't really... It's not needed in the moment, but it's needed in like 1 in 100 times or so. There's an issue with the anchor, and in order for the issue to the anchor not to be catastrophic, you do this backup thing so that the backup takes care of it. I was like, hey, like you should be doing this backup thing, and like she didn't do it, her friends didn't do it, and So when we did it together, she ended up doing it, and we had this discussion where you don't know how much rope you have to throw down a waterfall if you can't see the bottom of the waterfall. So we decided we're just gonna make a guess, and if we run out of rope, you have a whistle when the waterfalls, because you can't talk, so you need something to get over the volume of the waterfall. So they're like whistle signals that tell you like, I need more rope, or just like communication codes. So I'm rappelling down. So it's gonna go back to acro, like there's a reason why I just kind of want to paint a little bit what happened. So I'm going down the edge of the waterfall, I'm like rappelling, and it's in Southern California, and so it's like snow melt, pretty cold water, like hitting my face, and like I have a helmet, and if you're in a waterfall and like you put your face forward and the water hits your head, like it creates like a little cocoon around your face so you can breathe in a waterfall. It's going down. It's pretty much, that's amazing, going down a waterfall. And I reached the end of the rope. I'm like, well, we almost got it to the bottom, but I need a little more rope, so I whistle her, and nothing happens on top there. Nothing happens on top there. Nothing happens on top there, and like I'm in snowmelt, so it's cold, and my hands start shaking, and I'm there for like 10 minutes, and like I'm starting to get concerned about hypothermia in a way where I've experienced if my fingers get too cold, I can't use them anymore. And so if I want to do a plan B, and I had extra gear in my bag, I could have like rigged something, so I knew this was a little bit concerning to be stuck in the water under a waterfall and getting cold, but I was like, okay, so this is an exception, but I still have like a plan B and plan C. And so I was almost starting to get ready to start executing plan B of like rigging something else and extending the rope on my own. And then she lowered me, and later when we debriefed, what had happened is the anchor, kind of like the knot and the device, had gotten pushed against the rock by my weight, and so she couldn't undo the extra safety. And there's also a pretty easy procedure on how to recover from this, but she didn't know the procedure. So according to my other friend up there, she was panicking hard for 10 minutes. Yeah. About 3 weeks later, I arrived at home in my car, and I often had this thing where I just stay in my car and I start scrolling social media because I'm like tired, I'm done with the day, I don't have to rush anymore. And I see a lot of people posting really nice things about her, and I'm like, that's a really strange feeling to people are just like praising her too much, and like too many people. There's something, you get this really bad feeling. And eventually I saw the helicopters that recovered her dead body. We were supposed to go doing another trip pretty soon too, but she went with someone else, and so that exact situation where the anchor develops an issue had happened, and she hadn't used a backup, and her friend hadn't paid attention to like her at all. He was like turned away, and so by the time her friend turned around again, she was at the bottom of a rappel and not moving anymore. The anchor had failed, and she just kind of fell to her death. And like she was a really cool person, and I was a real bummer, but like I was also thinking about like I didn't want to push her too much about doing the safety thing, and maybe that she had a little issue with it with me might have been another reason why she didn't do it. But I was like, if I had a choice between encouraging her more to using the like the safety step you're supposed to use, and her getting really mad at me and never talking at all with me again, versus her being dead, like, I'd rather have her not talk to me again her whole life, but her to just live. It brings this up because sometimes in acro, you get people who get really upset at you if you see there's something unsafe happening, or like they really need spotting because it's about to fall. Or when people are like, well, I did it once, so I don't need spotting anymore. Usually the thing with spotting is, if you actually have to help people, it's called assisting. That's not spotting. Spotting is if you do not touch the people you're not needing, you're just there for safety. And even if you did it once, and usually people that complain they don't want spotting and get angry at you, they usually did it really terribly once. And you want to keep spotting until you've done it a lot of times, and you've also had some failures where things went wrong and you learned how to recover from those failures. Because spotting isn't there to be needed every time. Spotting is there for you were needed 1 out of 100 times, and that one time you were there and caused someone from not getting hurt. And it just changed my whole thing. Like, so constantly new people coming in, and I had a romantic partner who got super mad at me. Just let people fall and let them get the consequences. And I don't want people to get broken bones, and especially having that experience of, having a friend die, it changes your perspective on safety. And I think it's something that pretty much everyone goes through in acro or in these sports. They kind of start with an invincible feeling until hopefully they have small accidents. There's a saying about rock climbers. There are reckless rock climbers and there are old rock climbers, but there are no reckless old rock climbers. Yeah. Well, that's one story, but let me go on to tell you about something happy. Solar immersions. As far as I know, they're over. But there used to be this thing where for like a week, you went to a program and the programs happened all over the world by different teachers. And you just like for 1 week, the entire day, you're doing Acroyoga. The solar immersions that I did, it takes you for a whole week towards standing hand to hand. And they came up with this amazing progression, amazing teachers and teacher assistants, and it's a wonderful program. You just, it was really nice. Like, you just show up, you're with like really cool people, you get to do fun things, you get to go to lunch together. And at the end of the day, you're super tired, and I ended up giving one of the teachers a ride in the morning, got there on the evening back, so I got the inside shoes. It was really nice. Some of the fun things we did is we did blindfolded acro. It is so eerie. I was blindfolded. My partner was blindfolded. And the instructor would just tell us poses we had to do. And I remember the feeling of my partner falling out of star. It's, you don't see anything, you only feel your feet. And I guess your hands. So once your partner disappears from the feet, they're just somewhere out in space and you don't even sense where they are. And you can't do anything to help them slow down or anything. It was so spooky. Obviously we had spotters, so they just kind of fell and we got the experience. Wow. Another interesting thing I learned is a lot of festivals and these higher level classes have prerequisites. I stressed a lot to get all the prerequisites. One of the ones I struggled with the most was low barrel roll. It's different from high barrel roll. I don't see a lot of people in New York City doing low barrel roll. It's kind of, it doesn't look so hard, but there's this like foot change in the middle, so that's very precarious, and where I tended to drop people. And so I was like stressed, will I be good enough? Like I just have this low barrel roll, very shaky. And then like a few days in, the teachers asked us to do low barrel roll. I was like, okay. I hope it happens. How I can make it happen. And at that point I found out over the half the class didn't even know what low barrel roll was. I was like, wow. And it's pretty typical for when there are prerequisites. So like half the people can't do it. I'm not telling you this to make you skip prerequisites and just sign up for high level stuff without being able to do it. But it's just the reality. It's like one of these dynamics. I guess, yeah. Another really interesting thing was in that immersion, I thought people kind of liked me. There was this one moment I mentioned how people would massage each other. I remember towards the end of it, I was like lying there watching the teacher demo, and 3 people at the same time were massaging me. And then the teacher looked at me, I was like, he's having a good time. I was like, yeah. And, like I thought kind of people liked me. And then after it was over, some of us went hanging out, and I was like, this is strange. Like, no one really likes talking to me or interacting with me. Like, I thought people really liked me. And then like at some point, I don't know what I was doing. I was chatting with one of the teachers like a few days later, and she was like, oh yeah, people are so drawn to you because you're so safe. And suddenly I realized like I wasn't popular as a person, I just made people feel really safe. And I was just their safety blanket, and once I was done being their safety blanket in class, they didn't really personally have any interest in me. I was like, okay. And this just goes into the bucket of, you know, stuff you experience when you do acroyoga and social dynamics. I also had people I did more regularly acroyoga with. I remember there was like one person, we'd like meet up in a playground. I mean, nowadays, if as an adult you go to a playground, like, I don't know, like they'll call the police at you or something. But there was this playground, there was this like rubber padded surface. There were no kids anyway, so we're like, hey, let's use a rubber padded surface. And we did our acro practice. And one day she had an ear piercing, and I was trying to get my foot on her shoulder. I kind of missed a little bit, and I bumped her ear, and her piercing fell out. And then we went to like a piercing studio. They could like, you know, like fix it and put it back in. And I was choosing to the piercing artist. I was like, I kicked her head. And he's like looking at me, and he's like, well, they seem pretty friendly, like, and he's like joking, like, do I have to be Captain Safe-A-Ho? That's how I learned the term, Captain Safe-A-Ho. And something happened on my friend's face, like somehow that triggered something, and so it's just like this expression change. And I never saw her again after that. Oh. There was another regular person I did acro with. I mean, that was perhaps the most epic of acro experiences. We would meet next to a lake every week for like 3 hours, and we do acro, and it was so blissful. Like, picture yourself, like, I'm lying in grass. There's like a nice water fixture nearby, it's a lake. We're in the sun, and she's just on top of my feet. She was often like in these poses, such as holding, like because she was like, oh, this is a really good back stretch or like shoulder stretch. She was, it was like years after, she was still recovering from an injury. She was in a treehouse, and she had a pretty high fall where she broke a lot of her bones when she fell out of it, and she's, like, obviously her bones have grown together. She's not in a cast on top of me, but still years later she's still rehabilitating her body. I'm actually surprised how many people I've met in the Acroyoga community who do acro for rehabilitation. And just to be clear, like, this is where context is important. If you break a bone or tear something, you don't want acroyoga as recovery for your acute phase, you know, like you're still healing your fractures. That's insane. But even after like a bone grew together, or, you know, like a tear, people's life quality is still affected like years later. And you know, like the shoulder is different, moves different, and for that part of recovery, people really swear by acroyoga and how much it helps them. So, I mean, this was pure bliss. Like, you're hanging out with someone you like, just in the sun, beautiful day. She's like on top of my feet, and I mean, I think for me, the thing I like the most in acroyoga is it's cool to learn all the skills and stuff and group things, everything's fun, but the real thing is just a partner I like. It doesn't have to be a romantic partner, but, you know, just someone you like being with, and you get really deeply immersed together. There's this You know, like you have to like coordinate your bodies, receive each other. You have like a goal you work towards together. You're giving your all. You see them giving their all. It just feels really good. Final LA story. Back at the Green Muscle Beach. That's a jam where people on Sundays afternoons meet. I was at the jam. There are about 70 people. I saw a woman walk into the jam, and I was like, she is the most interesting person of all of them. So I go straight up to her to talk to her, and then I'm like, so do you want to do some acro? And she's like, later. You do acro with my friend here. So I did acro with her friend. And eventually her friend was like done. She wanted her break. She was like, I'm done. So I beeline my way back to the most interesting person. I was like, hey, how about now? She was like, a little later, but do acro with my friend. And she had a pretty big friend group. And she put me through her entire friend group. Like one of her acro friends after the next, I tired out, and I would come back to her, and she'd be a little later. And eventually, it took serious time. I went back to her. I was like, "Well, I've finished all of your friends. They're all done. Do you want to do acro?" And she's like, "Okay." And I did acro with her, and at the end of it, we were like, hey, do you want to go for this cool canyoneering hike? And, you know, the story continues, and that's how I met my longest relationship of my life. And, I know, to us it's kind of like a fun origin story. Well, that's my experience of acro in LA, and the next chapter is New York City. Maybe for another time.